thinking. So anyway, it was just like, all I could think of was I needed to do something that was normal. And, instead of what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? All I could think of was I needed to get my kids to church. That was what we did on Sunday. I knew I could do that. So I was exhausted. We all were, quite honestly. But thankfully we had like an afternoon church or something. But we still went to church. And I remember there being a Sunday school lesson on forgiveness that Sunday. And let's just say I didn't stay in that class. I didn't even make it down the hall without sobbing. And I was sobbing so bad and so hard that I couldn't hardly breathe. And I remember my really study president kind of coming after me, and I went to the bathroom, went to the back of the bathroom where they have, like the changing area for the people being baptized and whatever. And I sat on the bench and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And she came and she just hugged me and she just held me. And I don't know why I'm sharing all this, but it was part of my healing process, I guess. But I remember asking her, how am I going to forgive him? How's this going to happen? And she said, and this was so profound and so inspired. She said, Paula, you don't have to do it today. You don't even have to do it this year. You have time. It's okay. She said, I've got to work on forgiving them. It's like, it's just kind of a big deal, right? So the healing process takes time. And it's something that no matter where we're at, no matter what we're doing, anything, it is just something that you've got to take the time, you got to put in the time. Now, I'm not going to tell you, because it would not be true, it only took me a year. Some people say, oh, wait a year, go through the 4 seasons and then you'll be fine. No, it took me at least 3 years to stop crying. And then it took me about 5 years to feel like I was normal again, to feel like mentally I was normal again, like I could handle things. Now, I went through therapy during that time. I went through a lot of therapy during that time. I went through parent groups. I went through individual therapy. I went through, the whole family stuff. We did a lot of therapy, me and my kids, because there was just no way that we were going to be able to handle what happened without some form of guidance or help on how to maneuver this. I met with my bishop often. I still meet with my bishop a lot. But now it's more like once a quarter and more just to catch up on, here's what's going on in my family kind of thing. Thankfully, I've been blessed with great bishops that have done that, home teachers. And well, my home teachers here in Georgia were a little different, but so I moved from North Carolina to Utah. And between North Carolina and Utah, we were pretty well taken care of. When I moved back to Georgia, it was a little different then. But we've still had some good home teachers or ministering people or whatever you want to call them now. And just good people in general. But I share this with you because healing takes time. And being able to get to a point where you're okay there's no set time frame on that. There's just not. It depends on what you went through, what you're dealing with now, and where you're at. What stage you're at. And nobody's the same. Nobody's the same. We all go through different stages. We all go through different time frames. It's very interesting. Yesterday, for our second Saturday here in Atlanta, we do a temple session at 3:00, and then we go to dinner at a local restaurant. We have a dance. It's lots of fun. It's just, well, the temple to me is like a great experience. It's something that I think we all need to come together with. But it's not just for single adults. So there are married people in there as well. But its majority is more single adults. And sorry, I had somebody go and come back. Anyway, we were in there, and I look across, and there's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 rows of men. I don't remember how many. But I saw this man, that I swear to you looked just like my last husband. So I was like, oh my goodness. But what was great about this, I mean, like so I've been married more than once. That's why I say my last husband. But my last husband was an engineer. He was like a computer engineer. And he kind of had the typical, I don't mean this in a bad way, but the computer geek type look, right? Like he had, the glasses and whatever. But anyway, but this dude, I'm telling you, had the same type glasses, had facial expressions like he did, had I don't know, the same type hair. It was just really weird, but it was a younger version of him. So he's like, my last husband's quite older, but it was a younger version of him. And I kept looking over and I'm like, that is just so weird. But what was great about that was that there was no feelings of fear or anxiety or whatever. It was just like, dang, that's just really weird that he would look like him. So that was just a kind of a cool experience for me to know that it was kind of also kind of confirmation that I had gone through the healing process. I didn't feel like I needed to bolt, It was like it didn't trigger any whatever. It was just like, wow, that's just kind of weird. I didn't realize it, I'd see somebody that would look like him. And he was married, and I think his wife was there with him and whatever, and it was just cool. But I did have to say to myself, that's not him. That's not him. And we're okay. So anyway, so as far as the healing process goes, it does take some time. It just does. And I do recommend, though, that you do wait a year. And that's not just my recommendation. I know that a lot of our leaders have recommended this. A lot of therapists recommend this. That you wait a year to really seriously date somebody. And go through those 4 seasons without somebody. I don't care how bad your marriage was or how over you think it was long ago. Like I've heard a lot of people say, well, I've only been divorced 6 months, but my marriage was over 15 years ago. No, because and I understand that. I get being in a bad marriage. I get that, but you were still living in it. So it's a whole different ballgame. When it's final, when that finality happens, and then you've got to go through that process, that is different. It is so different. And so now I'm not saying you have to. Nobody's saying that. No, you do whatever you feel like you're prompted to do, and definitely follow the inspiration of the Lord. He has way more power and influence on your life than I ever will. But it's generally healthier to wait some time before you seriously date somebody. Now, go out for fun, go out for dinner, go do some bowling, go do some whatever. Go for it. It helps to have a friend. But to have a serious dating relationship, that's just generally a different ballgame. All right. Any questions or comments? If you do, just unmute. Otherwise, I can talk all night. I'm not going to. I'm only here for an hour. But anyway, connect. Number 3 says connect with your life. The emotional and sometimes financial strain of a divorce can sometimes mean that other parts of your life get neglected. Reconnect with friends. Start going out again. Get your career back on track if it was affected. And above all else, learn to have fun again. I can tell you this was my number 1 challenge, was learning to have fun. And learning that was okay. My personality is generally more serious, believe it or not. And I've had to work on having more fun with my life and doing things that were more fun and planning more fun things. So I went back to college, and I started off in public health thinking I'm going to do health and wellness, and that is what I do now. But I changed my major. I went back. I went back, I guess, 2 or 3 years after everything happened. I just went back to BYU. I started in BYU, I'll just let you know, in '85. And my parents went through a divorce that year. And my mom needed help. I was the oldest of my siblings. And so I went back home into
the fall semester there and lived at home for a while and never went back to BYU. And so I decided I was going back to BYU. And I was able to get a scholarship for single moms and all this kind of jazz. It was just kind of cool. But while I was there, I changed my major because I have 4 sons. I got really heavy into Boy Scouts, and BYU at the time had a major that was geared for that. And I thought, I'll just spend a career in Boy Scouts because I know Boy Scouts so well. And so that's what I did. And it was called Recreation Management. And it basically trained me on how to have fun. It's kind of sad that I had to be taught how to have fun, but that was the best major for me for that. It wasn't the best major for me for my career, but it was the best major for me for having fun. Now, it did not work out for me to have a Boy Scout career. I have gone on to do other things and in health and wellness, which is my love and where my heart is, kind of thing. So that's what I do now. But anyway, so but having fun, and that's one thing that I think is really good with the single adult program, is because there's so many opportunities to be able to have fun, to be able to do so many things, to be able to be a part of that group to do it. And we're all doing that together, which is just so awesome. And then this is another big thing. And again, I have so many stories and experiences with this. It says, don't take an anesthetic. Many people want to numb the pain after a divorce and may use another relationship, alcohol, drugs, food, or work to distract themselves from the painful feelings of loss and failure. These things only bring temporary relief and may actually make matters worse. The pain gets buried alive, and at some point in the future, it will come up in order to be healed. Better to do it now than to compound the problem. So, I don't know if you guys if you want to share your experience with this, please go ahead. But that's exactly what I did. Because for me, it was so painful what I'd gone through. Emotionally, I just felt like I couldn't even function. And so, I mean, all of us were on some sort of antidepressant, anti-anxiety. We were all diagnosed with PTSD. I mean, it was just a mess, right? And so I realized that I was spending more time away from home than I was at home because I didn't want to feel it. And I stayed so busy from the time I got up till the time I crashed in bed at night. I didn't care if it was running to Walmart for 15 errands during the day, or if it was work, or if it was visiting, teaching, or whatever I could come up with to fill my time with, I did. And it wasn't until I realized I was doing more parenting on the phone than I was at home. When I was talking to my oldest son, who was 15 at the time, and I don't remember exactly our conversation. I remember trying to get him to do something, and finally he said, "Mom, you are never home. You're never home, and we need you here." And that really hit home to me, because I thought they're just going to support me in being busy and doing all these things, and I just got all this stuff to fill my time with and whatever I've got to do. But he said, "Mom, you're never home." And he was mad at me. He's like, "You're never home." Well, after that, I made a point to be home more. Was it harder? Oh, yeah. We watched a lot more TV then. We would do other things. But eventually, the TV started being less and less, and we started talking more and more. Therapy did help us. And we did start doing other things together as a family. And we did start talking about it more, which was good and it was helpful. But it is better not to try to numb that. Because as I learned also very painfully, is that those feelings buried alive show up later as health problems. And I got really good at burying feelings. So I started having some health issues. And I started going to doctors and going, "Okay, fix this." But what I didn't know at the time was that it was more because of emotional stuff that I buried. And so a friend of mine found out about 2 or 3 of my diagnoses, and they were all pretty much autoimmune, and there was nothing the doctors could do about it and whatever. And for those of you not familiar with autoimmune diseases, it's basically where your body is attacking itself in whatever area that it's in. And most autoimmune diseases are emotionally based. And that's what I've learned through this process. So anyway, so my friend gave me a book called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. And it's a great book. I recommend it to a lot of people who are dealing with, especially if you're dealing with multiple autoimmune or multiple health issues. Generally, you're dealing with a lot of buried emotions. So anyway, so I recommend that book a lot. There's a lady in my ward now here in Georgia that I shared that with one Sunday. Well, not really her, but to the Blue Society, and she got the book, and I got a message from her. I don't know, probably about a month ago now. She thanked me for recommending that book. She felt like it was very helpful. But she's found another book since then that she said she likes even better, and it's called The Emotion Code. So either way, but it helps a lot in dealing with buried emotions. Another technique some people use is EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. There's a lot of different things, and we won't go into that a whole lot, but I'm just letting you know that multiple health issues generally means an emotional burial of some kind. And those books are generally helpful for a lot of people. It helps, rather than bearing feelings, to be able to recognize them and to deal with them and to work through them. So I just went through something recently where my youngest son left on a mission. And my youngest son and I, tight, we're like so close. I love all my kids, do not get me wrong, but my youngest son talks more than a girl. He would share with me anything and everything. Like, he was just an open book. He would just share with me different experiences, different insights. He's like a spiritual giant. We would have just fabulous conversations. Well, I miss that. My other kids are wonderful. They're just not as verbal as he is, let's say. And so anyway, I went through a day or two of just feeling really sad. And I knew that it would be hard. I just didn't realize how hard it would be for him to leave. And I'm glad. I mean, I'm totally supporting him being on a mission, and I'm loving the fact that he's doing this. And it's fabulous, right? I mean, who's going to not say, hey, I don't want my son to go? I definitely want him to do that. And so I, within a couple of days, started developing bronchitis. And I'm like, I haven't been sick in 3 years. And I pride myself on not being sick, right? And it's like, because I've been able to learn how to stay well and healthy, which is kind of cool. But then I learned through this, I'm like, okay, because all the stuff I'm doing to get rid of this isn't working. So what is going on? And so I did a little bit more digging, and I realized that sadness was held in our lungs. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not dealing with that sadness. So once I started going to, or treating myself more for that sadness, that grief, that loss, if you will, I started getting a little bit better. And I was like, okay. Now, yesterday I was around somebody with I pretty much wearing myself out yesterday with the fun I was having with single adults. I was out in the cold a lot and whatever, so I don't know if I've got a sinus thing or whatever, but whatever. But it is just really, really something. It's kind of cool, actually. So it looks like we've got a couple of comments here. Let me read those. Del says, Dr. Pepper Schwartz, a world-renowned sociologist, has taught that about 1/5 of married couples are divinely happy, another 1/5 are miserable, and 3/5 are not much more or less happy because of their marriages. I've heard that too. As a sociologist, Dr. Schwartz says that they can't figure out how to predict which level of happiness any particular couple will likely end up at if they marry. I've heard that. So I mean, that's nothing new, and I think it's up to us individually what we're willing to do and go through and whatever. What I've learned though is that we just cannot let fear guide how our relationships. We just can't. If we're afraid of, oh no, we're not going to be happy, then you're never going to be happy. It just really matters. It just matters how you perceive it and your expectations and what you're willing to put into a relationship and what they're willing to do.
I think each relationship is kind of individual. And that's kind of my take on that one. So Linda here says, she says, I did during his illness and finally his death. I became totally addicted to a game and online friends. I couldn't face my grief. I chased it away for so long, nearly a year. I finally turned to counseling. The name of the book is Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. Another one that's really good, that's been recommended to me, is The Emotion Code. Now, I also use other things that help. Like I use essential oils and I use other holistic type natural medicine that has really helped a lot too. So, there are other things that that I do, but the book does help. So I got some other things we'll talk about, but for right now, I want to just kind of open this up for discussion a little bit. Somebody's even asking, what's the consensus on dating a non-member? I can tell you what my opinion is, but I'd like to open that up to ask, and maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's first go through the stages first of all the different things. So does anyone else want to make a comment? And you guys will be thinking about the dating that we'll talk about in a minute. But do any of you have a comment or a question or anything that you want to talk about with regards to the first 4 stages that we talked about here, and going through the stages, giving yourself time to heal, connecting with your life, and don't take an anesthetic? Anyone? You can just unmute yourself and then talk. If not, we're going to go on here to this. So we've got the bigger picture. The decision to start dating again will not only affect you, but also your family. It is a family thing, I'm just telling you. Particularly children from the marriage. They are likely to miss their other parent and may not fully understand the reasons why you split. Most kids, under a certain age, I think most kids, I think it's somewhere in the teenagers or younger, will blame themselves no matter what. My kids did, and it was nowhere near their fault. But my kids would think, oh, well, if I had done this, then maybe he wouldn't have done that. And I'm like, so they had to go through therapy for that. So just so you know, just beware that even if they've not voiced it, most kids somehow think that if they were better or did something different or whatever, then that wouldn't have happened. They could have saved it. And you can introduce the idea of you dating again before you actually do anything and allow them the freedom to share their feelings with you. My kids were all for it. They were more for it than I was before I thought I was. My youngest son, who was 7 at the time of everything, kept, he was going to be 8 at the end of the year. Everything happened in April. He was going to be 8 in December. And so we were talking about being baptized. And he goes, no, I'm not going to be baptized until Mom gets married again and I have a new dad that can baptize me, because all the other kids got to have a dad to baptize them. So I'm going to have a dad baptize me. It's just not fair. And I'm like, you might be waiting a while, And so thankfully, through a lot of prayer, even fasting, my oldest son turned 16 that year, so he was a priest. And it came to me one day of what to say to Chris to tell him, to try to ease his mind here. He was just mad. He was just so mad that he was not going to get a dad to baptize him. It was just so not fair. His dad couldn't even be at the baptism, let alone baptize him. He just could not be in his life. And so anyway, I would talk to my oldest son, and then we went to him and I said, Chris, you may not get to have a dad to baptize you. And it may take me a while to get married because, I don't have I'm not dating right now kind of thing. And I don't know when that's going to happen. But I said, I want you to think about this for a minute. So Jesus didn't have a dad baptize him either. Joseph didn't baptize him. Heavenly Father didn't come down and baptize him. He didn't have that. Instead, Jesus had his cousin baptize him. And for Jesus, I mean, that was kind of a big deal, right? To have a cousin baptize him. And the cousin was chosen. You know, it was a really special event. And as we're going through this and talking to him, I said, now, Jesus is your big brother. And he's the one that holds the keys to all the priesthood power that anybody that baptizes you would get to hold. And TJ, who's my oldest son, who's 16, holds those keys to act in the place of Jesus Christ, who is your big brother. And TJ's your big brother. I said, wouldn't it be just kind of cool to be baptized by a big brother that gets to stand in the place of Jesus to baptize you? Now, never had I thought of saying anything like that before that day. But I felt like that was inspired. The Lord was just telling me, here's what you need to say to him. Now, TJ, said, yeah, but maybe by the time you're 12, Mom will be married, and then you can have somebody ordain you a deacon. And I'm like, don't tell him that, because it may not happen, and it didn't happen. We were talking about this actually, I don't know, a couple months before Chris had left on a mission. He said, Mom, can you imagine if I was still waiting for a dad to baptize me? He said, I still would not be baptized. I still would not have anybody to do this for me. And I thought, yeah, isn't it great that you chose to have your big brother baptize you in the place of Jesus? Had we not had that conversation, that would have been completely different and could have had a completely different outcome. And that little boy who was angry, who hated his dad and was so mad at him, has now become such a spiritual giant and such an amazing person. I mean, he's like, I know he's only 19, but he has just an older personality. He knows the scriptures more than anybody I personally know. So there was a time during his teenage years, I could go to him and I could say, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? Or when I was a primary teacher, I'd be like, hey, I want you to come in and explain this, you know, New Testament story or whatever to the kids. Special guest. And, you know, they loved them, so it was awesome. But I often think about that. And I think about how Satan was trying to get this 7-year-old boy to not be baptized. And how the Lord knew his heart and knew what he needed to hear. And I got to be that vessel. And it's still a very memorable time. So anyway, so just know that the kids will take on different things and will take on different perspectives and different whatever. And most of the time they're going to blame themselves because Chris did. Chris said, well, maybe if I was this way or that way, he wouldn't have done that. Maybe this had nothing to do with him, but it took years for him to get that. And for him to comprehend it because he was 7. He couldn't even grasp what was going on. You know, he was just too young. So anyway, so whenever you're dealing with, especially with the kids, you know, that's something to just be aware of. So in there, just know that dating is going to affect kids. And I know I went off on a big tangent. I'm big about tangents. Sorry about that. All right, number 6, we got the feel-good factor. Divorce affects people's confidence, not just in themselves, but in relationships. How many people do we hear talk about how they have trust issues, or they don't know if they're going to be able to love again, or allow themselves to be vulnerable again to do that? So they do have issues with confidence in feeling love, or even the sanctity of marriage. I remember going through my first divorce and feeling like, what's the point? I waited all this time to be married in the temple for what? For him to go and marry somebody else. You know, I mean, it is really kind of a trying thing. So it's important to understand what happened and to forgive yourself for any mistakes that you think you made in the marriage, feeling good about yourself again may take time, and often it can help to talk to a trained professional like a therapist so that you don't make the same mistakes again. And that was something I had to do, is I had to go through and realize what it was about me that attracted what I call the triple A's. And I had to get to know myself, and I had to figure that out. We'll talk about the triple A's here in a minute. But getting to know you, some relationships are so intense that people can lose sight of themselves completely. Afterwards, it can feel like they've been left with only half a life. They don't know how to care for themselves or to spend their time without the relationship to define them. This is where you do the work of reconnecting with yourself and developing the most important, the most loving, loyal, lasting relationship you can is with the Lord. And then ready to try again. You will know when you're ready to move on and start a new relationship, because there will be an urge to share your full, exciting, and enjoyable life with someone else. You will have love to give rather than a heartache to heal. You will believe that you are someone worth getting to know, and it will be one match's lucky day when they win your heart. And that's a really big deal, is being able to be in that spot. So I was talking about the triple A's, and then we'll get to a couple people have asked about dating non-members, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the triple A's to me, or I had to realize, because I grew up in let's just say I wasn't in a happy home growing up, okay? My parents joined the church when I was 7. My father was in the Navy, and he was a typical sailor. I mean, anything you think about a Navy sailor, that was my father. The drinking, cussing, whatever, that was him. And when he joined the church, he quit all that, although I called him a dry alcoholic after that, because he still wasn't so nice. But it affected my perspective on men and relationships. And I didn't realize that. I knew I was going into relationships as an adult after going through some therapy and feeling like, okay, well, I know what I don't want. I just don't know what to look for. And so I just kept thinking I was avoiding what my father was, right? But then I realized I married men that had different personality traits of my father. They didn't have them all, but they had some of them. And so I had to learn in the last, few years that I've gone through therapy, of how to avoid attracting an abuser, an addict, or an adulterer. Those were the 3 things. That's what I call my AAA program. Now, I had to learn what it looked like. What does it look like to be in a relationship with an abuser? What does it look like in the beginning? What does it look like to be in a relationship with somebody who's controlling? And that took a while for me to learn that. And it was so eye-opening, because then I'm like, there were signs, because they're good. They're charming. They're loving. They'll tell you everything you want to hear. They're not going to be abusive in the beginning. They're just not. They are so good at what they do. And so it's recognizing those traits that now I've learned I repel those men, which is kind of cool. Being able to, I've learned that the men that cannot stand being around me are the men I wouldn't want to be with anyway. And so, not everybody likes me, and not everybody's going to like everybody, and that's totally okay. Not a problem. I'm okay with that. But just know that, we're all at different relationship stages. We all approach them differently. And some people, I tell you, some people I have shared, and we'll get into this more later, but I've shared some of the cycle of abuse kind of thing. And I've had people argue with me, more men, but I've had people argue with me going, oh no, that doesn't happen. I'm like, it's happened every time. I had a therapist one time tell me that she said every time, she said that there are no exceptions. She's never met an exception to the cycle of abuse. She's never. And there are times when I've met a man and I've gone out with a man who has shown some of those signs, and they're part of me that still tries to think maybe he's different. But he's not. They never are. They never are.
But thankfully, they're few and far between in the church, and that's something I was so incredibly grateful for, because most men are good men. It's just those few that, kind of make it challenging for us, and it can go both ways. I've seen it on men and women, so it's not just men. It's just my experience has been with men. but I've also seen it where women are being controlling or abusive to the man. So it's both ways. So I'm going to share with you the signs for both. It's across the board, but at a later time. So today we're going to talk a little bit about dating in general. So so a lot of people want to approach dating in different ways. If you're pretty new, say within 2 to 3 years of divorce or death of a spouse or whatever, and that's what I call kind of new, then a lot of people want to approach it kind of slowly, right? Like you need to be able to give yourself some time to kind of ease into dating, if you will, and take your time, because remember, there's no rush. There's just no rush. So we want to make sure that in doing this, though, that you go about it in a healthy way and make sure that you communicate your intentions. There are some people that just want to date for fun. They want to date a lot of people. They don't really want to get into a relationship, and that's totally fine. But just be upfront with that. So, because if you're going out with somebody that does want a relationship, that has been single a long time and it feels like they're ready, then the fun person may not be the right person for them to be dating. So just know that you have the same purpose up front, and you're not gonna. It's not like a job interview, so you're not gonna figure that out in the beginning. Like on the first date, the worst thing to do is to ask yes and no questions. So you're looking for a relationship? No, you don't ask that, right? The first time you get to know somebody, and I love meeting people for the first time at a single adult event. Why? It's safe, right? If I know somebody's going to take the time to come and talk to me at a dance or at a whatever, I like meeting people in person. I'm not a big fan of online dating, although I've heard some good stories about it. Got a few friends that have met somebody online. More power to them. I have tried it. I'm not saying I haven't. In the early years, I did, but I just found there were more scammers that I tended to attract more than real people. No, that's fine. It just was what it was. But now we're at a point where you want to make sure that your intentions are real. Like and I was telling you about that I went out with to dinner every week for almost a year. We were good friends, but we established that from the start. Well, within the first month or two, it was when we had that discussion. So it wasn't like first date on. But anyway, but you want to take some time to get to know somebody. I will tell you that one of the signs of an abusive or controlling person is that they rush the physical aspect of a relationship. The hand-holding, the kissing, the whatever. If you just met somebody and they're doing that, it's usually a telltale sign. So that's usually somebody you want to avoid. Now, I talk to people who say that they've done that, or they did that with their, I can think of one man that was arguing this point with me, in a nice way. We're just more having a discussion. But that his late wife, he was a widow, and his, I think she passed away, and he was within like 3 months, he was trying to approach me about dating. And I'm like, well, here's some boundaries that I have, because I love setting boundaries for myself. I'm like, I don't know you. I'm meeting you because he was messaging me through Facebook. I said, just I'm going to this conference. It was in Charlotte, and we were going to meet, whatever, that would be fine. So we can meet there. But anyway, but in the gist of our conversations, I let him know a couple of things that I do is I like waiting a few dates. And at the time I said 5. Before somebody holds my hand or kisses me. Well, he thought that was outrageous. That was just like horrible. I'm like, you can do that in a month, right? It's not like I'm asking you to, wait years. I'm just telling you, take some time to get to know who I am, because I don't even know you. I've never met you.
you know. And if I know the person, then that's different. But I didn't know this person from Adam. And I knew that his wife had passed away like 3 months before. And I'm like, well, hello. But anyway, so he was like, well, no, because she and we met. And he was just telling me that from the start, they were holding hands, they were whatever. And they had this wonderful marriage and this wonderful relationship. And I'm like, that's fabulous for you. But that's not how I want to do a relationship. Now, I'm not saying I've been perfect at that throughout my years, but it's good to establish some sort of boundaries. I do believe, though, that when you first meet somebody, that's not the time to start adding that in. You've got to take some time to get to know them and to work through some of that. And just know the intention of dating. If it's just to have fun, fine, let's go have some fun. Maybe you can have a dating buddy, but then there's no romantic relationship there. Because the seasons of relationships tend to be, you're going to fellowship, say at a single adult activity or online or whatever, and you're going to get to know somebody. And then you're going to go to dating, where you're just going out and you're just kind of getting to know people and getting to know them. And then you're going to go to courting. And then that's when things start getting a little bit more serious and you're more exclusively dating. And that's where the hand holding and the kissing and the whatever comes in. And then you generally go to an engagement, and then you go to a marriage, and then you go on from there. So what we've found, and what I've done, and what I've found in my research and all my studying and talking to different people, especially therapists and whatever, is that people who don't follow that those seasons or those stages tend to have a very rocky foundation in their relationship. So, and again, we'll talk more about those later, but I'm just letting you know up front that those are some of the things to look for. Somebody who's going to do that. And I've got experience with it every time. I have not met an exception. Every time I think this guy's going to be different. He's not. It just doesn't happen. So it can be the same way with women as well. And there's a lot of women that will, try to do that early on too, and I would run. I would not, well, I would not really run, but I would not allow that. Set your boundaries. What are your dating boundaries? We'll talk more about that later. Let's get to the question though, because we had a couple of people kind of asking about this, is what is your perspective? And I'll tell you mine after you share yours on dating a non-member. So I want to open this up. If you want to share comments about anything else we've talked about, please do, because I like this being more of a discussion rather than me just talking. Okay, come on, people. Having too much silence. Julie, how about if you share your thoughts? And maybe Roger.
Okay. I don't think it's a good idea to date a non-member. However, my dad was a non-member. Years ago, this is when he was, he met my mom when he was 16. And, and he ended up staying in and is very strong now. So I guess there's no definites on that. At my age, it's kind of scary to find a non-member because, they've already formed their habits, their thinking, their foundation. So I'm thinking when you're older, just a little more of a questionable step to take. I guess if the Spirit whispered to you that he's a good person and he will join, I would take it slowly, super slowly, but I don't look for non-members, period. But that's just me. It's funny because even my own father has said, well, Julie, maybe you should start looking at non-members. I'm like, what? He goes, well, your two sisters married non-members and they're strong. They joined the church and they're strong and they're good men. Whereas I married a member that was born in the church, raised by good parents, and it all crashed and burned. So there really are no guarantees. I feel like you just got to follow Spirit. I prefer a priesthood holder that takes it serious and just understands kind of the bigger picture and has understood it for a long time. I don't want to be leading the man. I want the man to I don't want to be led by the man, but I want to be able to lead together. And if I feel like I'm dragging him along to church and all that, that doesn't appeal to me at all.
Okay, yeah, great thoughts. I love it. All right, Roger, you want to share your thoughts?
Sure. I have a little bit different perspective for a couple of reasons. Like Julie was saying, I have a father-in-law who my mother-in-law probably wouldn't have been married had she not married a non-member. Now, of course, this was back in the day when the church was much smaller and it was in the South. And, there's just wasn't a lot of possibilities. Took him 20 some odd years to join the church. So, yeah, things can happen in different ways and so on and so forth. My other perspective is that there are a lot of good people in the world who are not members of the church. And for me, where I'm at right now, I'm not looking for exclusivity. I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm approaching my social aspect of life from a friend scenario. And I think from that perspective, who knows? A non-member who I make a friend with, they might become interested in the church. They might not. Who knows? But that's just my perspective at this particular point in my social part of my life. Hello?
That's awesome. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I'm trying to mute myself while you're talking so that it doesn't come back to me in my picture. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I love the different perspectives. Okay, I want to hear from two other people. Can we have another woman and another man? I can call on you, but I'd hate to put you on the spot. I know Julie and Roger really well, so they'll be okay with me calling on them.
I can speak.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Teresa.
So I haven't dated, and I don't know if I'd be open to that or not. I don't really know very many non-member people, or most of the people that I know that are non-members are married or people I work with. If they're single, I'm not aware of it. But I wouldn't be interested in someone who is a drinker or a smoker. I can say that. I definitely would want someone who would support me in my religious beliefs.
Yeah, amen. Now, Teresa, where do you live?
I live in Alabama.
Oh, I love Alabama. What part?
In Huntsville.
Okay. I actually was born and raised in Alabama, but more in the Montgomery area.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. Loving it. So we actually have do you know about the Huntsville group that comes to our Atlanta activities? Sorry, side note here real quick.
I attend the Madison Huntsville single adult activities, but I've only been doing that for like 2 months.
Okay. Well, Bob Woody is on here as well. Bob, do you mind if I spotlight you for a minute? Unmute yourself.
Sure.
Bob's also there in Huntsville. Do you know Bob?
Yes, we know each other. I know Teresa.
So Bob and Doug and, oh my goodness, the other names are
Tim.
Yeah. So a lot of times they'll come as a group. So maybe you can tag along. We have some great activities out here, and we missed you guys yesterday. But anyway, so that's something to consider too, is maybe just joining the group and meeting more people. So then that way you can kind of expand your the people that you know, kind of thing. Okay. Love it though. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comment. Bob, do you have an opinion on dating a non-member?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Well, it's kind of difficult in the South to find people that's in the church, but and also you're looking at a problem when you date a non-member too, because your values and your faith may not line up together. So you just got to kind of weigh it out. depending on how serious you'd get.
Yeah, that's true. So here's my viewpoint on that. I just spent the last 12 years, this is just for me personally, okay? I just spent the last almost 12 years raising 5 kids in the gospel. Now, granted, one of them has left the church, hopefully only temporarily, but I got 4 that made it, okay? And they haven't left like completely, like they're still, you know, listening to general conference sometimes and still reading whatever. So it's not like they're anti the church. They're just dealing with some stuff. So anyway, I've spent a lot of time raising those kids in the gospel and teaching them about having a testimony, and teaching them about studying the scriptures and praying and receiving inspiration and revelation and getting married in the temple. And there is no way at this point in my life, after spending 12 years of my life teaching my kids that I'm going to then go and show them the opposite, if you will, of what I've been teaching them. Because what I have learned throughout my process with my kids is that I'm the example. They have watched me like a hawk. Now, if you've got kids, you know, right? You know, you make a mistake, they're going to be calling you out, right? They're not going to sugarcoat nothing. They're going to tell you, Mom, that's not right. Especially if you've taught them, right? So there's no way at this point in my life, or at any point in my life, that I'm going to show them or my grandchildren a different example than what I have taught them. I am going to be the example of what I've taught them. If I have to die single, I would rather do that than to go against what I have taught them. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that somebody can't be baptized. I mean, I just attended a wedding a couple of weeks ago of a really great friend, love her to pieces, who met somebody online, and he was baptized the week before they got married, and they got married civilly. Fabulous. If somebody wants to get baptized and wait a year to take me to the temple, I can wait. Eternity's a long time. There's no rush. Okay? So I feel like I've waited this long to marry in the temple. I really don't feel the need to rush a relationship, because my experience was I already had marriages like that were rushed. And even though we got married in the temple and whatever, they turned bad really fast. And it wasn't fun. So, been there, done that, right? So when it comes to a non-member, I'm not going to take that chance. I'm not going to go and tell my kids, hey, do what I say, not what I do. I'm not doing it. So that is my perspective. Now, I have some strong feelings on that. I got it. But that is for me. You may feel something different. My mom, before she passed away, told me the same thing. Paula, you've married men that were in the church. Why don't you date somebody that's a non-member? And I always go back to that, to the example for my kids. I realized, remember I told you that my first year I was kind of messed up with emotionally, right? I remember going to my daughter. I have one daughter. And she was 14, I think, at the time, and she wasn't really doing her hair. She wasn't really doing makeup. She wasn't really doing a lot to take care of herself. And I remember we shared a bathroom. And I remember just talking to her about that one day, because, you know, why don't you do your hair, do your makeup, you know, do more to take care of yourself more. And then about 5 minutes later, I went in the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I looked horrible. I looked horrible. I don't think I'd had a shower that day. I don't think, I know I didn't do my hair. I mean, I looked so awful. It was just like, and then I realized that woman looking back in the mirror there, in my head, the thought came, she's going to follow your example. Now, I know my hair was wet today and I didn't do my hair, and that's okay. But I did for church this morning. Anyway, and I still got some makeup on, and you guys have seen me, you know, I'm good.
what I did though was I started doing things different to take better care of myself and to show her this is how we do it. And then I realized I didn't have to say anything else to her after that. When she was ready to do that, that was when she did it. They're going to watch you and they're going to follow your example. I also learned early on that I don't know if you've heard this or not. I learned so much from my therapist, but men tend to marry women with personality traits like their mom, and women tend to marry men with personality traits like their dad. Right. So that's when I knew I had to retrain my brain to look for something different, because that's what I had been doing. But I knew that they weren't going to have a father in their life. So, but thankfully they were blessed with great uncles and other family members and whatever to look up to, other priesthood leaders that were in their life to be able to do that. And I knew then too that I had to become a better woman to be able to give my sons somebody better to look for. And not that I was a horrible person, I wasn't. It was just emotionally I was gone. I was rock bottom emotionally, and I knew that I needed to come back up. So anyway, it was just people on this. I'm just so vulnerable. You people are going to know more about me than anybody else in my life. I'm just telling you, because I'm just being real with you, and you're not going to see that at a single adult event. At a single adult event, I'll be out there dancing, I'll be having fun, and we're going to be the hi, how are you? What, where are you from? Whatever. But here we're going to be real, okay? And I'm sharing this with you because I'm not saying it's been easy for me to be vulnerable, but through the years I've learned that my story, it helps other people. And that was one of the purposes of my story. I learned that early on. I learned that the first year. There was somebody at church whose husband had cheated on her. And one of our mutual friends was trying to console her and help her feel better. She goes, "Oh no, I'm good. At least I don't have to go through what Paula Cheryl's going through." And I was like, oh, well, if my story can make her feel better, we're good, right? At least there's some purpose to this, of this madness. So that actually made me feel better. And I've been able to help other women through the years that have gone through something similar, which is good. So anyway, all right. So we've talked about some of the stages of dating tonight, and it has been something to me, because whenever you approach a relationship, it is different. It is different. I will tell you how, Fred, do you want to, Fred, yeah, please talk. Share with me something. Can you unmute yourself, or do I need to do that?
No, I will.
There you go.
You're talking about dating non-members. I'm going to share some old information. I was divorced about 35 years ago, and I was married to a faithful Mormon woman until she decided to find her another guy. Seems like my women find other guys. And so I was about to marry another Mormon. No way. I was a faithful member. I dated non-members for about a year and a half. And they were good Christian women. They went to local churches and all this stuff. But it wasn't long before each one of them said, "Well, why won't you go to bed with me?" I'm going, let me explain that to you.
Yeah.
And so that was a challenge. And I kind of took the same role you did, Paula. If I want my children to do, they're going to do what I'm going to do. Of course they didn't, but so, and today, that was 35 years ago. These were nice women. I didn't meet them in bars. I met them at church events or whatever. And so you have sex pretty soon after you get knowing somebody. Back then, and even more so today, it's a problem within the church as well. But I would not date a non-member. My ex-wife was, like I said, faithful member. She was a member she was Relief Society president, and live with someone who has left the church like she did. That's not a happy place to be. So I wouldn't want to live my spiritual life separate from my wife. It would be very difficult. So there you go. There's my 3 cents.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, in our first call, did we go through this already? I don't remember if we did or not. Maybe it was a class I taught or workshop I did. I don't remember. I've gone through this so many times. But there are 5 things that the leaders of the church teach us that we need to agree on to have a good, healthy relationship. And most marriages do not have this discussion beforehand. And I think everybody needs to talk about this before you get married. Some of this is more during your engagement process, more so than the beginning, or your courtship process or whatever. But 5 things you need to agree on. If you don't, your marriage is likely to fail. Not saying it will, saying it's just more likely. 1 is religion. If you do not agree on religion, even just come to terms with, if you are a non-member, if you are marrying a non-member with a member, you just have to agree on how you're going to live your religion. Come to some sort of compromise. My brother claims to be agnostic, and his girlfriend is Jewish, and they had lived together for like, I think 3-4 years, something like that, and they had a daughter together, and they had agreed to raise her as a Jew. And now they're broken up, and now he'll have a Christmas tree in his apartment or townhouse, whatever he has, for Christmas, and he does Christmas stuff with her, not necessarily Jesus stuff, but just more Christmas traditional stuff. And she doesn't like that. But, they weren't married and they weren't working anyway. But anyway, that's something that you do need to agree on, is religion. Even if you have different religions, you've got to come some sort of compromise. But it is so much better if you have the same religion and you've got the same goals and the same perspective toward that religion. Because like my parents were both baptized members of the church. They were converts. I was 7. My youngest brother, my brother at the time, he was the baby. I think he was like 2 or 3, 4, something like that. Anyway, they had complete different perspectives on the gospel, even though they were both members of the church. My father believed he had the priesthood. What he said went. If we did not obey, we were not following the Lord. And that was my father. And my mom would look at him and go, were we in the same meeting? And it was just like, somehow we're missing what we're being taught. So their marriage failed. Not shocking, but anyway, just different. But either way, you've got to agree on religion and the perspectives of religion. You're like, for instance, there's so many different perspectives in gray areas, I call it, even with our own religion. I mean, let's be real. Word of wisdom is one of those. I cannot tell you how many different perspectives and how many different interpretations or whatever people have on the word of wisdom, or keeping the Sabbath day holy, or taking the Lord's name in vain, or, any number of things, right? That people, or even morality, or chastity, or whatever you want to call it, intimacy, what they feel like is acceptable, and what is it before and after marriage. A lot of different perspectives. So not only do we need to have, in my opinion, the same religion, you also need to have the same perspective on that religion and the same goals. I know there are some people that just don't agree with certain things. And I know for me, the word of wisdom is something that's very important. I'm looking for somebody that's more health conscious. And not everybody is, and not everybody does. And that's okay. That's just my thing that I'm kind of looking for. Now, does that mean that I don't marry him if he's not? No. Just one of the things that would be kind of a nice to have kind of thing, right? But we've definitely got to agree on religion. He's got to support me in the way that I live in my health. Okay, enough on the cover the religion thing. The other thing is parenting. I don't care if your kids are adults. You need to agree on parenting.
There are some people that I know. I have a friend, a wonderful friend, who got married after her kids were grown. But I think one of her kids or some of them had to come back and live with them. Oh my goodness, did that create some issues? So you need to be able to have that discussion on, are we going to do this or not? Are we going to have our grown kids move back in with us, or do we need to go live with our kids or whatever? So, so you need to have those kind of discussions. Parenting is still a deal, whether you've got kids at home or not. Money is another thing. Money is huge. How you spend money, how you use money, your savings, your whatever, what your plans are for retirement. Because at this point of our life, we're looking at it a whole different way, rather than we're no longer looking at a 40-year career, most of us, right? We're looking at retirement soon or whatever. So, so different perspectives on that. And then recreation, I believe, as do the leaders of the church, and you can find this in different talks of different apostles and whatever. This isn't just, the gospel according to Paula. I've actually done some research in this, and I've taken the class of Achieving a Celestial Marriage, I think 3 times now as a single adult, because I'm bound and determined I'm gonna have a celestial marriage. Anyway, so so recreation, you want to do something fun together. If you don't have some common, you don't have to have everything that you like to do. Like I know there are some men that love scuba diving. Okay, I would be the woman waiting for you on the boat, because I hate my face going underwater. Not gonna happen. The idea of going scuba diving almost scares me, But would I support you? Go right ahead. Go scuba dive all you want to. I'll be up here breathing my air. Yeah. So anyway, so when it comes to recreation, just find something that you do like to have together, that you do like to do together. I love to go dancing. I think that that's kind of fun. I like, there's just so many different things you can do together. I like playing basketball. I actually love coaching basketball. I'm 5'3.5", but I could coach some basketball. And I've been pretty good at that. I like that. Anyway, it's just different things. And then the last thing is intimacy. Something that's kind of a taboo subject, right? Especially among a lot of people. And I'm not saying we need to have this around the table sitting at a single adult dance. Let's not have that discussion there. But when you're dating somebody, if you're in that courtship relationship, you kind of do need to have a discussion on, and like for me, I'm going to establish some boundaries from the start. I think the idea of dating is fabulous. I love the idea. But if I'm in that get to know you stage, I don't want you holding my hand. I don't want you kind of kiss me. I have a love, I don't know if you guys have heard of love languages. We'll talk about those more later, but one of mine is physical touch, and that's rare for a woman. And so for me, it speaks love. That Hey, Hey, Mickey song of, you take me by the heart when you take me by the hand. Don't hold my hand unless you're going to be telling me that you love me, because it's, it kind of just messes with my emotions. And so, so that's more why, and I explain that to them so that they realize, okay, she's not just trying to be controlling, she's trying to just get to know me without all those emotions coming in. And most men don't want to hear "I love you" within the first 3 dates. They don't want to hear that. And I'm not saying that I would do that. I'm just saying that it just sparks different emotions that I want to just take the time to get to know somebody first. So anyway, so that's a boundary that I set, and I tell them why. All right, Fred, did you have a comment again? You need to unmute yourself.
Here we go. All right. You got into some good stuff here, Paula.
I know, right?
I'm going to go back to way back some discussions you were talking about when you're first. I was widowed 9 years ago, and I didn't go out. I had a son, 13 years old, and so my job was to be with him. I worked, went home, took care of him, and although I'd like to have left him behind a few times, but that was my job the first few years. So I didn't really do anything, and I didn't know where to go to do anything. But I met somebody, and we became friends. and live about 40 miles away. And we were kind of like the friend that you talked about, the buddy friend. There's nothing romantic about it. This person was running some musical events somewhere near here, and I would go there on Friday night, and she would work my tail off, doing all the things you do around a musical event. And then she would come here, and we'd go to musical events, which she loved music. And it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. It was comfortable. But there was never, I intentionally would not proceed further because I understand. First, let me tell you, men have two things on their mind most of the time, even older
Trust me,
guys.
some of us know about that.
What's that?
I said, yeah, some of us have figured that out.
Yeah, right. It's not a new thing. It didn't come around this century. But, one of the things that kept that relationship that way was me refusing to go physical. I would hold her hand to get her out of the car or pull her somewhere, but I would not, and it was an intentional thing on my part because I didn't want to go there. I wasn't ready to go anywhere other than have a friend. So I think that's a good thing. So back to the other thing is that men are two things. That's visual and physical. They say that men think about sex about 15 times every hour. Women probably think about it 15 times a year. I don't know. It's been a long time. So, but I mean that's the way it is. When a man is looking for a woman, he's looking for a woman. Visual is where men are. You can call it whatever you want. That's just the way it is. We were designed that way. Boyd K. Packer said, and when I was as young men's president, Boyd K. Packer had a little pamphlet for young men only, something like that, and it talked about the way men are designed or have this drive that brings them towards women, and that's the drive for procreation. And this is Boyd K. Packer. This is not Fred Friday. And if we didn't have that, we would be out in the woods hunting and fishing and cutting down trees and having fist fights or whatever we would do out in the woods all by ourselves. And this is where a lot of the men of the church have gone, in my opinion. They're out in the woods doing things that men do, and because they're afraid to go further. But I don't know how I got off on that. But anyway, men are physical. Got to remember that. But as men, from a man's standpoint, we have to be able to control that. And some of us do better than others. We can be tempted very easily. And Satan will do that to us, to any of us. And we just have to watch out. So anyway, I don't know. I got off the tangent here.
You're good. You're good. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the vulnerability there. And it is so true. And it is. I know that I've heard some women and men, but women talking about men will say, well, I just want them to accept me the way I am. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. Like, I went out with a man one time, and we'd been going out a couple of weeks, and he was telling me about the typical woman that he would usually date. And he said, Paula, so I could always date somebody better looking than you, but I'm looking for somebody that's got a little bit more personality too.
That's not a good.
No. I know that. I'm just letting you know, though. But he, from his perspective, he was being open. He was being honest with me, and he did not mean that as a put down. He was trying to compliment my personality, but first said, "I could go with somebody better looking than you." And I'm like, I remember saying back to him, I said, "Do you realize what you just said?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. I didn't mean it that way. It's like more of a thing of I don't think he meant it that way anyway. I think he just meant it as a compliment, but the way it came out, I was like, no." So anyway, but that's fine, different looks appeal to different people. And I know that men are very visual and they're more physical and whatever, which is fine. And a lot of women are too. I know I'm more that way, and which is not the norm. And I'm very motivated by relationships. So that's why I love my friends. um, 'cause, 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 ' Let's see, we have somebody, let me go back through the notes here too, so it looks like I missed a couple. Linda says, I'm married and an active member, and I was not a member, but that's a scary aspect. I would say I ended up being the stronger, committed member. I would probably not consider risking that. Marriages work, and as much as I love my husband, I wouldn't want to do that again. And Dell said, all the men I know think women wear far too much makeup. I prefer women without makeup. That's a preference. Dr. Pepper Schwartz teaches that both men and women tend to marry someone who causes them the same emotional frustrations or stresses that their mothers did. Oh, lovely. Apparently we marry, that might be why I'm not married, because I'm too, whatever, I don't know. Maybe I'm not causing them enough emotional stress. I don't know. Anyway, apparently we married to try to resolve the unresolved relationship difficulties of our mother's upbringing. I don't know. That could be a whole nother discussion. There are no guarantees, Linda said. Yep. And I'll email you guys the 5 things. That's fine. Looking into. Oh, yeah. Okay, Bob, you want to say something? Oh, wait, you need to unmute. Oh, let me unmute you. Looks like you're muted. You're going to have to unmute yourself. Sorry, I'm reading these kind of late. I need you guys raising your hand or something.
I'm here.
Okay.
Another thing we need to add to that list, today's time is politics. Basically, we're not supposed to get into politics, but it's good against evil now. And if you're not on the same page with whomever you're dating, or if you're trying to date, if you're not on the same page with that, there's no way you're going to get along.
That's a very good point.
It's just to the point now that it wasn't that way 20 years ago with politics. But now it's just evil has gone, we're so far off the kilter with all the issues and everything. And we're losing a lot of people in the church on some of the issues.
Yeah.
Because they don't agree with, basically with what the church, with the stance on our gospel principles. They want to go more mainstream and more secular with the world. But you got to be on the same page with politics, so that should be number 6.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree with that. I haven't heard the leaders of the church say that, but there are certain.
I know we don't talk about politics in the church,
No, we don't.
But basically, you've got to. For you to get along, you can't have somebody supporting and somebody on this other side totally pro-life, or you can't have somebody supporting gay marriage on somebody on the other side for LGBTQ or whatever all that is. You can't be that much different, or you'll never get along.
Right. I agree. Did anybody else have a comment on that? Yeah, I know there are certain points. If you don't agree with the certain points that I believe in, I'm like, not going to work.
I may be stepping out here, but that's the way I feel.
No, yeah. No.
And nobody else wants to talk about it.
Yeah, right. Great point. Great point.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've had a great discussion tonight. I think in the future I'm going to have less of a PowerPoint, and then just kind of give a topic just to kind of talk about. Dating, we're going to be talking about a lot this year. I'm doing this every week, so we will definitely get into this more as we go on. And then, let's see, I have somebody. Oh, Dell sent something that he wants me to read. He says, people have such different ideas about PDA's progress, but I think that any man you ought
to want to marry should be supportive of your spiritual goals, particularly your chastity goals. If you don't want to kiss for a few dates, for example, he should be supportive. On the other hand, both the man and the women should be willing to discuss how they feel and how to find a mutually enjoyable way to express their feelings and accomplish their mutual spiritual goals. Yes, I agree with that completely. I think that's a great thing. Yeah, so when it comes to relationships, there is no guidebook. There is no, it's the way you should do it, it'll work, right? Like we're all different. And we're all going to go through different inspirations. I have dated men that I thought were in my life for a reason, that the Lord brought them into my life, and didn't know if it was going to go anywhere or not, but for whatever reason, I needed them in my life. And I learned things from that. And that has been very eye-opening. I know that for me, it's very challenging to date. I don't normally date a lot. And I think a lot of it is that what I have learned is a lot of men assume that I date a lot because I'm kind of out there, right? Like here in the Atlanta, especially, people are seeing me on Facebook. They're seeing me at all these single adult activities, and they're seeing me having fun everywhere and whatever. And I've had a couple of men go, "Yeah, but you probably just date all the time." I'm like, no, I don't know why they think that, but that's okay. Oh yeah, thanks, Dale. So anyway, I think it's what I've also learned, and we'll again talk about this more later because I know we're way past overtime, is that women tend to have kind of masculine traits and tend to have feminine traits. I think we all do in some ways. I think both men and women do. Or what is perceived as that anyway. What is perceived as a masculine trait is more leadership and power, or having an agenda, or taking care of the bills, or whatever, right? That's more perceived masculine traits. Well, I'm a leader. I'm an activator. I don't know if you guys I do a lot of personality tests, guys. So one of them that I really love is I did something called Strengths Finder, because through my life, I've been told, Paul, you're to this and you're to that, and you're to whatever, and more in a negative way. Well, in working my home-based business, I was at a conference and they had us take the Strengths Finder test to find out what our strengths were. And it was so incredibly validating to me to find out that my number one strength was an activator, which means I get an idea, I'm acting on it. I'm going to make it happen. So you guys get to benefit from that and seeing what I do with leading the committee for the Atlanta activities, right? Because I'm an activator. Inspiration comes, I'm on it. We're going to be having these activities. I'm going to be like, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's the plan. Instead of, Paula, you're too over the top, that I heard a lot. You're too overzealous. You're too whatever. Well, now I'm not. Now I'm like, this is who I am. I'm an activator. So I get an idea in my head, I'm going to act on it. That's what I did with the webinars. I've been feeling for a few months like I needed to do these webinars. And I said, kids, I mean, my youngest son was still at home. I had 2 kids getting married in the fall, and I had, my youngest son needing help to prep to get ready for his mission, and had holidays coming up, and I had a bunch of stuff needing to be repaired in my house. I had too much going on. So I kind of put it off. And then when I realized Chris was leaving, and, the other kids already married, everything else was already kind of settled, and I'm like, and the thought came to me is, now's the time to do those webinars. I'm like, all right. So I made the announcement that day. A week and a half later, the webinar started. The ideas were already in my head. I'm like, we're on this. That's what I'm doing. So, and my purpose in doing this is for us all to come together to have discussions. Have you have a voice? And let's talk about different topics. And let's talk about different things with being single adult in the church. In about 2 weeks, we're going to have a panel of men. And I want to talk about the men in the church. I tend to have a different perspective on men in the church than a lot of others do. And a lot of people are shocked by it because, my experiences. But what I've come to realize is that the majority of women, are supported through a divorce in the church. Most of the men are not. And I mean supported through friendships, through their married friends, through their leaders, through their whatever. Most of the time, and whether it is or not, men get deemed the bad guy. Most of the time, the women are the ones with the children. And so they get that attention because the kids were there. And the men are just kind of having to go to church by themselves and whatever. So there's a lot of people that will complain that men aren't coming to these single adult events, that men aren't coming to do whatever, that men aren't whatever. I'm going to tell you now, if I felt like I had to walk into a firing range, which some men do feel like when they go to church, I wouldn't be there either. Or if they're going to be looked at or judged or whatever, it's a different ballgame. It's a different perspective. And so what I want to do is we're going to have a panel of men. This is in 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about single parenting. We're going to talk about solo parenting like what I did. And we're also going to talk about co-parenting and some do's and don'ts and some good things and some bad things and that kind of thing. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about men in the church. We're also going to talk about women. But I want to give men some attention. And we're going to do that for 2 weeks. At least that's my plan at this point. And if it works out for us to do it for 2 weeks in a row, that's what we're going to do. I have a man panel. And I've got some men that I do know that are going to do it. I've got some men I don't know. And if any of you want to join us, go right ahead. We're also going to have women participating in that. But I want you to hear from the men, because it has been very eye-opening to me to hear the men through the years share their stories and share their perspectives. And so I'm excited about doing that because I think it will be just kind of awesome. All right, Fred. Fred, you raised your hand. Where did he go?
Where's the hand raising thing at anyway? I don't see it.
There is, should be.
That's why I typed something a few minutes ago when I was.
Okay, it's all right. Yeah, the hand raising.
Okay, I'm ready.
Fred,
I'm ready.
how do you raise your hand?
I don't know. Let me answer your question first. I don't know. Let me see if I can get my video to work again. But I think that's fantastic, Paula, because I was divorced, and it's exactly like you described. It is you are a failure, no matter what. And I was a bishop. I was on the High Council. I got divorced, and then suddenly I was a big failure. And what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
It costs. So it'd be a great discussion in a few weeks. I'll love to participate in that one.
Yes, that would be awesome.
It's a tough road to drive, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's the way Satan, through the members of the church, pushed the good men out of the church.
Right.
My opinion.
I know, for real, right?
What?
I agree.
Hold on.
And that's a lot of why men don't come to the events.
Well, and when we look at it, like here in Atlanta, we have 12 stakes, right? So we have over 10,000 single adults. 10,000 that are 31 and older. Divorced, widowed, or never been married. Over 10,000. And we have 80% inactive. And most of those are men in their early 30s
There we go.
to their 40s. And it's because of that, because they've got those kids and they're deemed the bad guy and they're whatever. A lot of men in their 50s and 60s tend to be able to come back a little bit better, a little bit easier. And that's why we see more older men at single adult events, because they've reached a point where their kids are grown, they've been single longer, and they're like, you know what? I am who I am. But like, I'm 51. So I tend to,
I'm in my 50s too, Paula.
yeah, you are, Fred. According to your doctor, I got it. All right. So
Sorry
anyway,
about that. I couldn't help but add that in there.
I know. So anyway, so it's a different perspective, right? Like I'm still on the younger side of things, I think, because I've got kind of a younger personality, and I plan to live to be 100. So I've still got 50 years ahead of me. Well, I share that with some people, and they're like, "Whoa, I don't want to live that much longer." You know, I've had some men to tell me that. I'm like, "But I do. I want to live to see my not only my great grandchildren, maybe even some of my great great grandchildren." Right? Like, I just embrace life. I just think it's just kind of cool. And so anyway, so we come at this with different perspectives, and sorry, that was a big tangent. But when we talk about men, I really want to do that. We're going to do a panel of women too. We are, and this is not just for men. I know Lori had a great question. I want men and women here to attend this, okay? But that night that we talk about men, we're mainly going to be hearing from men, but we'll also be hearing from women. But I want to be able to hear their stories and their sides and their experiences, if you will. I've talked to a couple of men recently who say, well, because we're divorced, we can't have certain callings in the church. And I'm like, okay. And now I know that you can't be bishop or stake president or whatever, but there are a lot of callings you can still have. We have, in my stake, we have a single man that's in the stake Sunday school presidency. We have a single woman who's a stake primary president. We have another single woman who's the stake relief study secretary or something. I think we've also had a couple of brethren who served in the bishoprics, like as a counselor. We've had another one who was the branch president. So, I mean, there are different callings though, that men can have, but in certain areas of the church, there are certain people that don't extend those callings to some men. And so that's something we'll talk more about that later. Sorry, I'm already starting to cover that topic, and I don't want to do that. Now, Linda, as far as I know, they're not barred forever, but I do know that you do have to be married to be a bishop or a stake president. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is that right? You have to be married for those. Unmute yourself so you can answer me.
I don't know, and I don't want to be either one of them.
No, for real, right?
For real.
I wouldn't want that one either.
I know that branch presidents, I've seen branch presidents that are single.
Right, I have to. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so those are some things we're going to be talking about, and then, we'll just go from there. So I'm excited. Next week, we're going to be talking about single parenting. So especially those of you that have experience with it, definitely need you here. If you feel like you need to learn from it, come on, we want everybody here. And if you guys would you guys just, let your friends know about this? And I'm going to send everybody the recording. I realized I thought I'd hit record early, so this one's going to start late. Sorry. But that's okay, because we ran 2 hours tonight instead of 1 like we normally would. But it's been a great topic.
Paula, this is Lori. Can I say something real quick?
Please, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that, I know Maribel just posted something about joining these webinars. I really appreciate it, because I know that for the last couple of years, you've been trying to get me to come to singles events. And, for me, it's been difficult just simply because, I lost my husband 8 years ago. I don't date. I go to work. I come home. I go to church. And I've been to a couple single dances, but because I don't have any LDS single friends, so, I'm the only single LDS I'm the only member in our ward that's single, other than some 80-year-olds. We just had a gentleman join the church a couple months ago who's single, so I kind of approached him the other week.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and said, "Hey, can I drag you to some singles events?" I did get him to sit with me today because he was sitting by himself. But it's so nice because the perspective is so different in what you're trying to accomplish. Not like a hookup, hey, come to a dance to get hooked up with anybody. It's more relishing in the fact of building relationships, building a support group. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm excited to be able to come to the next event that you're having. It seems like the last two that we have had, my teenagers have had single dances. And so it's kind of collided with that a little bit. But, you know, so it's really nice. It's really nice to hear, you know, the men tonight speak up and share their point of views. And so thank you for that. It's great.
Thank you. I'm excited to hear you're going to be coming. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited. That'll be great.
Well,
Yes.
you know, especially going, I don't know if anybody else tonight feels the same way. You know, there's nothing worse than walking in somewhere where you don't really know anybody and you kind of feel like people are kind of clicked up or grouped up because they know each other and they're in, you know, pairs or groups of people. I've got a pretty outgoing personality, but it's very awkward to just kind of come in and, you know, I'm not that person to go, hey, I'm here, you know. So I don't know. I've just always felt kind of uncomfortable doing that.
Right. No, I get it. I really do. And we do try to have some mixers beforehand. So before the dance, so that then people can kind of get to know each other a little bit more.
Right.
Maybe this
Right.
next
So
month.
thank you. I didn't mean to monopolize the mic, but
No, I
thank
love
you.
the comments. So you go right ahead anytime. It's all good.
Thanks.
This is what this is for. Give you a platform to share your thoughts. So that's awesome. All right. So I am so grateful you guys have joined us. Fred, you have another thought?
Yes,
First, you got to tell us how you're raising your hand.
all right, let me tell you how you raise your hand. That's all.
Please do, because I couldn't find it either.
Okay, if you touch the bottom of the screen below the little pictures, a little menu will pop up where it says audio, video, share, participants, and then there's three little dots there. Does everybody see that?
Uh-huh.
The three little dots?
Oh, raise hand.
And it says more down toward the bottom of your screen. And when you get that little menu, press more, and there's a little message that says disconnect audio. Of course, now it says to me to lower my hand. It'll say to you, raise hand. Everybody see that? When you tap your screen, you'll see the little menu, audio, video, share, participants, and the three dots says more, and that's where you'll get the raise your hand. So there you go. Made my
Did
contribution.
you find that? Did you find it?
Mine just says invite when I hit more.
Oh, really?
Huh.
Yeah.
Are
You
you?
have something on the upper right, maybe?
You're in Alabama.
Stop.
I don't have that in Alabama.
Okay.
What did you say, Linda? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Mine says invite also, but when I opened this up, it asked me if I wanted to open up in the app, and I don't think I did that last time. I did have raise hand, but this time I don't, and I don't have it on.
I don't know.
I think at one point earlier on in the conversation, I saw in that toolbar you were talking about where it had like a red hand, but then it disappeared. I didn't see it, but now I see what you're saying. If you go to the toolbar and then you go over to more, mine says raise hand, hide my video in the gallery, or disconnect the audio.
Yep, that's what mine says.
All right.
Your
Bob,
public service announcement.
Bob, are you on a PC or on your phone?
So what?
Are you on a PC? Are you on a computer or on your phone?
No, I'm on my computer. I may not have went into it the same way as far as the webinar, though. I had the hand there a couple of weeks ago when I was on there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where it's at tonight.
I'm on my phone, and if you just tap one of the video pictures, if you're looking at a gallery, then the little menu at the bottom pops up.
Oh, okay. What about participants? Can you click on the word participants? Mary Kay said that she can find it there.
I don't see that on that one.
No.
Yeah, well, when I press participants, Paula, it shows me on the very bottom, it says chat and invite, but it shows everybody on
Okay, on participants.
the participants who's
Yeah, you hit
actually on.
participants, you can go over to the right-hand side and raise your hand.
Now, see, I don't see that. I just see
Yeah.
participants, but I
I
don't
got
see
it.
where you can raise your hand. That's
Well,
interesting.
it's over on the right-hand side of the screen. Mine did, popped up that way.
I'm glad you muted, Paula. I can see what's going on over there, so I'm glad you.
Thank you, Fred. My eyes are watering. I had a cough.
We need to give you some what do you call those things? Essential oils.
Yeah. I don't want to drowning myself in all day. I feel fine. I mean, energy-wise, I feel fine. It's just my voice and oh my goodness.
Well, I do thank you also, Paula, for all this. It takes us a while to warm up, I can tell.
That's fine. And it will. But I think as the weeks go on, we're going to get to know each other more, and it'll be fun. Thank you, baby. Okay, so some of the computer stuff, I think Kevin said it could be Apple versus Android stuff. So does everybody now know how to raise their hand? Got it? Okay, so we're good on that one. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Yeah, if I can see you, that will work, right? You're so funny. Oh,
Thanks again for everything, and I appreciate everybody attending and participating. It makes it so much easier for people like me who have a tendency to shy away from this kind of stuff. So.
Okay. No problem. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody joining. We're going to go ahead and get signed off because, we're already way over time. But I appreciate you guys being out here tonight, and we'll join back next Sunday. And,
Can I say one last thing, Paula?
sure, go ahead.
Paula, can I? Just to those who are kind of like Lori, I was like Lori in the beginning a few months ago. I just tell you that the Atlanta group goes out of their way to make you feel welcome. So come to our Atlanta events.
No, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Put a little plug in for us. Yeah, but that is something that as a committee, we work hard to do, and we, that is our goal, is to make sure everybody feels welcome and appreciated for being there, and for the courage it takes to walk in, because we know we've been where you're at some point, where now I come to these things by myself all the time, but I'm one of the leaders, so it's a little different for me. But
well, I know you had said in the very first webinar that you did that, as you're calling for the last 6 years, and that you work really hard in trying to get people out there, and a lot of times people don't come, and you would think as hard as you work that we would have a larger base of singles that attend, and I would say that I'm one of those people. You have reached out to me so many times, and I'll say, okay, I'm gonna go, and then at the last minute I'm like, I just talk myself right out of it. I mean, my nerves, my anxiety just get the better of me, and so this is kind of good, for me. So it's getting to know you from afar.
I know, right? Yeah. Because I do try to tell people, I'm like, just come say hi, come find me, I'm going to give you a hug, whatever. It's just like, I've even offered to go to someone, like, just call me, I'll come to your car and I'll walk in with you,
Yeah.
Like I've done that for people. Because I know that it's a challenge for some people to do that. So, and it takes a lot. I remember even before I was the regional rep, there were so many times when Saturday morning, that second Saturday would come around, and I'd be like, I really don't want to go today. Oh, Lord, help me. I don't want to go today. And it would just be like, all I could do is try to just put one foot in front of the other, get myself to the car and get out there. And it was like Satan was just trying to pull me back every time. And every time I fought through that,
it just wound up being a wonderful experience. And I made more new friends and I came back happier. But then, you know, I mean, I can tell you story after story, but anyway.
So in Atlanta, so here in Atlanta, is it every second Saturday of the month?
Every second
Okay.
Saturday.
All right. Same place, same time?
Same place, same time. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
All right.
now we're adding in either a fourth Saturday or a last Saturday event where it's just activities. So, and I'm going to go ahead and start the